So today's guest, Metta Monday's first guest, and my teacher for the past year through yoga school, Practice Yoga Austin, the one and only Jen Wooten. I felt like it was more than necessary to bring her onto the show because of her ability to expand on pretty large concepts that can be difficult to land. I'm blown away by her ability to really ingest these large concepts and break them down into more simple form and practical form to be able to teach others. Jen has had over 3 decades of learning experience and 20 years of working with bodies, specializing in the nervous system. The founder of Viasomatic, the one and only Jen Wooten.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being here with me today in the church where we met. I believe you had taught embodiment that day in the opening of our 300 hour.
Yeah.
And I was just like, who is this woman and why does she just know me? For starters. We also did the nervous system together in the 300 hour.
Yeah, trauma-informed yoga.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was just, that's when I think a lot of my understanding about myself and really the self-care practices that I wanted to bring into my life, my interest was really piqued and I was like, I need to figure this out. And I felt very seen and heard in Jen's presence and your presence. So I felt like it was right to bring her onto the show today.
Okay. Yeah. And can I just say, like, this church is a really special space. We've done trainings in this space. I think maybe we've been here for, I want to say 6-7 years, maybe more. But this is one of the oldest Black churches in Austin. Yeah. It's been a community space before that, and so there's just been a lot of magic happening in this space. Pretty special space. Pretty sweet to be able to be here and work here. I love it.
Yes. Yes. I was actually telling Ray, the owner of Practice Yoga Austin, the other day when I caught him in passing, I was like, hey, thanks for doing that thing and like just letting your dream come into reality, because all the people that have crossed your path that you wanted to bring into Practice Yoga Austin have been changing my life. So thank you.
Yeah, yay. Yeah, it's good to hear that. I think when you're a facilitator and certainly a business owner, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of effort. And as somebody who's really invested in community care and how we bring together communities, how we facilitate communities, how we bring people together. I know Ray does that as well. And it's kind of a invisible effort,
for sure,
right? And so it's really good to hear, to get that feedback that, like, all right, keep going, keep doing this work.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we should hear that.
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
We got to give each other our flowers.
We do. I love that.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring Jen onto the show specifically today because you will get more Jen because I need more Jen. I wanted to have her come onto the show to tell us about a pop-up that she recently had in February, because they're doing another one in March on top of another event that they are hosting this coming up weekend in March. So we're going to hear more about that. But to get started, I wanted to open up by asking Jen, what really brought you to this work?
To nervous system work?
Yeah, to nervous system work specifically.
Well, I started working with bodies. And I started when I was doing one-on-one and private lesson. I was really experiencing with people I was working with some really big emotional and physiological patterns, releases, lots of crying, body shaking, and things that I really couldn't explain and were frankly kind of scary
for sure.
with the skill set that I had. And as somebody who had done a ton of yoga trainings, I knew about anatomy, I knew about the cardiovascular system, the lymphatic, all the systems, but no one had really talked about the nervous system. And no one was really at the time, and this was, 18 years ago, nobody was talking about trauma in the nervous system and what it's like to work with bodies with trauma. And so I went in kind of 2 directions. I worked with clinicians. I went to 2 teachers, Steve Terrell and Kathy Kane, who were somatic experiencing teachers and learned about the nervous system and polyvagal theory. I also went and worked with shamanic practitioners and indigenous healing and read a ton about indigenous healing practices, a ton meaning what little is available, right? Because there's not a whole lot available to us. and really brought that clinical perspective and also what I learned from that Indigenous perspective to this work. And it gave me a lot of insight into what I was seeing when I was working with bodies that had experienced stress, chronic stress, dysregulation, and trauma.
Right, right. And with this vast knowledge of the nervous system, did it feel like at that point you were ready to truly integrate with intention what was happening in your work?
No, absolutely not. I mean, no, in fact, when I joke now because I've taught, trauma trainings for, a dozen years. And what people don't tell you is your trauma training is traumatic. You go thinking you're going to learn about other people, right? Mm-hmm. Like I'm going to go learn about vets. I'm going to go learn about domestic abuse. And what you realize is that you're learning about you. Yeah. And it's jarring, right? To go and recognize, I really hadn't really, put my finger on the pulse of the reality that I was also walking with complex trauma and nervous system dysregulation. And so it was an interesting thing to be working with trauma while healing my own. And working with trauma while healing my own. And I hope in that to kind of dispel the myth for, those who are working either in mental health or tangential to mental health through somatics, that, we have to have sorted it all out in order to be a resource for other people. And in fact, it is the pathway, right? It is the pathway through which we find our own healing experiences that, in fact, is what helps us become the best guides for other people.
Definitely. I love that. It definitely gives me, as a new yoga teacher, the permission to be like, hey, get your head out of the book and just go be with people. Yeah.
And one of my teachers says, it's 60% when you're sitting with someone, working with someone, 60% is for you, 40 is for them, right? And what you get to learn. I mean, every day that I'm sitting and working with bodies, I am growing in my own humanity and my own capacity for mercy, my own, like just throwing out what I think I know. Yeah. And really growing in just wisdom and heart.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Mm-hmm. I wanted to, okay, this is a question for me, but it's definitely a question for where we're going. But I remember when I wrote this one, teaching for 20 years, you have taught through various large-scale events that have touched the human experience quite a bit. And I would like to say some social crisis intertwined in those 20 years.
Yeah, for real.
Does the atmosphere that we're in now make you think back to any other space that you've worked with humans in?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I remember teaching during the pandemic, right? I mean, in fact, during the pandemic, I taught more than at any other time, really. I was just teaching a lot and hosting and, workshops and, supporting people a lot. But yes, there are these moments through, whether it's election cycles or local things, right? Things that are happening locally in the community. I remember in Austin for a while, there was, bombings happening. And so, I mean, there are these periods of collective upheaval that we're just, we all become frayed at the edges and we're all just sort of walking around, not business as usual. And so I really began to see this and absolutely feel this prior to the inauguration, right? But after the inauguration and in all the subsequent, shenanigans that we're seeing that really feel to so many of us like the destabilization of democracy. That there is just, there's kind of a collective freeze response, right? I mean, the fundamental purpose of government, right, is to create stability and support the safety, right, of and the health and the well-being of its constituency, right? And this government really hasn't done any of that. In fact, it's done the antithesis of that. And so, it's always difficult with political systems to navigate that. And there are people who are of the mind that politics are separate than spirituality, and I'm not of that mind, right? And really, like, I think at the very, very root of things, like, all of us, I think we could go to any person in the world, right? And we would all agree that we want to have access to health,
for sure,
well-being, basic resources, right? To feel safe and free in our existence.
Amen.
And to have access to, right, education.
Yeah.
But some of us want that for everybody.
For sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which leads me to my next question. What are you feeling in the studio, or even if it's, whether it's now that you want to choose, or pre-inauguration or post-inauguration, what were you feeling in the studio, seeing in your students? Because, and I know you have regulars, maybe even their shift. Yeah. What were you seeing?
It was really, for a few weeks, it was really heavy.
Yeah.
A lot of sadness, a lot of what we call the freeze response, which is just like, something has happened, something big is happening, and it's stressing me out, right? Stress is kinetic, and I don't know how to mobilize that in my system, right? So it was just a lot of, like, I walk into the studio and people, right? It was really hard for people to look each other in the eye, right? When we're in a stress response, it's really difficult to, like, look you in the eye and make my face do all the things, right? Nodding your head. Right. It's really hard to do. We can't do that when we're stressed.
For sure.
And so I was seeing the signs of that kind of a collective stress response. And what was really sweet is that eventually, and it took about a month, I went into the studio and I would hear people, they would, like, chatting with each other again. And, and so, to me, that's an indication that there is a moving out of the stress response, and people are mobilizing either back into their lives or back into organizing. And for me, the real reason for this pop-up was to give people a place to unstick the freeze response, right? Freeze response is different than, like, the collapse shutdown. Freeze response is like, there's a lot of kinetic energy, I'm stressed, right? Like, for me, I was, like, just, like, angry, but I didn't know pissed off. And for the first time in my life, like, really feeling myself as a patriot, like, wanting to do what I could to preserve democracy.
Yeah.
And democracy is really fragile. I lived in Venezuela in 2004 during the Chavez referendum. Venezuela is one of the wealthiest nations in the world, thriving democracy, thriving middle class. And we've seen in the past 20 years that democracy is not altogether stable, right? And so for me, I really wanted to create a space with this pop-up where people could come in, mobilize that kinetic energy of the stress response, right? To move it out of their system, so then they could move into action.
Right.
And so there was a dual nature. One part was just practice, and the practices that we do are really meant to, they unstick the freeze response in the nervous system. We're working actively with Viasomatic with stress responses and how to help move the nervous system. It's our tagline, move your nervous system. Right. Very intentionally and purposefully. And then secondary to that is finding organizations that have either been defunded or mutual aid organizations. Our first one was for American Gateways, and they do legal advocacy for Central Texas immigrants. And the next one we're doing is every library, and they essentially do find funding to keep libraries open, to work with legislation around censorship and banning of books.
Yes.
They endeavor to make sure that everybody has access to books, right? Yeah. And so that would give people a place to, and money is a good donation, right? Money is a good mobilization of energy, right? That feeling of, like, I feel helpless. There's this big sort of faceless threat in front of me and I don't know what to do, right? And really, most of what we can do is locally where we live in our communities. Right. And that is really the best place that we have power, right? Is to gather in community, to support people, to create communities of mutual care. Right. And so I wanted to create a space where we could gather in community, move our nervous system, and take direct action. Yeah. and feel that like, okay, I don't have to crawl under a rock for the next 4 years.
Yeah. I think that all the intention was definitely there. All of that happened with that pop-up. I went to the pop-up, and I highly encourage you to go to the next one. And what is so beautiful is the action part, because you feel something when something's happening in the environment, when you're hearing stuff on the news, and that maybe there's a burning passion in the opposition of that something. That action being, okay, I can move my nervous system, I've found the space, and I can donate to the resources that are in the field with their hands doing stuff, which is huge.
Yes. Yeah, exactly that.
I want to take time at this moment to read what it says on your Viasomatic website for the event. I saw it online and I was like, okay, going. But it says a somatic healing experience that supports healthy nervous systems and direct political action. How do we keep peace and joy alive when the world feels like it is falling apart? It's hard, but it is possible. Not by ignoring the chaos, aka the stuck, but by learning how to hold both awareness and resilience, stress and joy, reality and rest. It starts with knowing your nervous system, finding your people, which there was like 70 people. And it was so beautiful to see so many different faces, all different colored faces, and feel that shared purpose, like it says on the website. Because this was my favorite part, because resilience is an estate. It's a skill. And so with skills, we got to practice them. I think that we're just sometimes as humans, we can get into the practice of like, I wake up, I go to work, I solve the problems, I do the thing, I get my paycheck, I pay the bills, I take care of the kids, I go to sleep, rinse and repeat. And it can be hard to claim the space to practice these skills. Like, oh, are you resilient? Yeah, I'm resilient. Oh, are you brave? Oh, yeah, I'm brave. Are you strong? Yeah, I'm strong. Yeah, like these are great words that, I want to say that I am. But where do we take the time to practice them?
Yeah. Well, and you've heard me say this before. I quote my friend Natita Cassell here. She's the founder of the Trauma Conscious Yoga Institute. And she's something so brilliant, which is you practice in the light that which you wish to use in the dark.
For sure.
Right. And, when we don't have those skills, then there's upheaval, right? Things happen, there's upheaval, and we don't know what to do. And this was really, this is why I started the pop-up. The truth of why I started the pop-up is that I was spending a lot of time with like lots of different members of my community. And what I was really noticing was a little bit of a disparity between how everyone was reacting. And one, which was largely folks who look like me, who were just like, I don't know, should I drink wine for 4 years? And I don't know what I'm going to do. And there was just this like, should I move away? Let's move away, right? Like, we're looking at property and wherever, right? Portugal.
Anywhere.
And it just GTFO. And it was just like, I was like, there was just a lack of resilience. There was a clear lack of resilience. And what I would see and among my community of Black, queer, and trans, like, yes, there was right? Yeah. Like, this sucks. And I'm going to have fun. I'm going to go find joy. I'm getting together with my friends. we're going to build communities. We're going to do this. Right. We're showing up at the Texas legislature. And like, they were just, like, there are people who've been living under tyranny for generations, right? Generations and generations, who have that built-in resilience.
For sure.
Yeah. And I really just wanted to create a space that we could come together, learn from each other.
For sure.
And offer a way to mobilize, right?
Yeah, a lot was mobilized. I myself will admit that I was definitely in a freeze response. I didn't know that. Yeah. And that's the big part, is that I didn't know that until I knew that. Yeah. I could feel like there was a lot of like going under a rock. And then, I'm under a rock and then it's time to go teach yoga or throw a wedding. And then I'm with people again. And then I'm just pretending, and I got the face on, I'm doing the things in airplane mode because those are skills that I have to go do, and then go back home, get under my rock. Yeah.
And feeling fundamentally unsafe, you know, is interesting. Just like, it's a strange thing sitting on the couch with my husband, who is a 59-year-old white dude from Oklahoma, right? Big old guy. Being like, you know, I feel like walking out of the house and moving around the world feeling unsafe. And he's like, yeah, welcome to that feeling.
Oh, for sure.
You know, because there are those among us who felt that.
Yeah.
You know, for on and off for a long time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's such a huge awareness to feel and be like, oh, that's why.
Yeah.
My partner, who you know, Bailey, and who y'all know because you watch this every week, she is white, for those of you who don't know her, and she can dress kind of masculine sometimes, and she'll dress feminine sometimes, but when she's dressed masculine, before even the inauguration, she does feel like there are eyes on her. And like, okay, we're sticking out like sore thumbs because I'm letting people know we're the queer couple in the room. And I try to be very heightened to that awareness to make her feel safe. But the thing I can't help her, I said make her feel safe, I can help her ease into some safety. But the thing that I can't help with now post-inauguration is walking into spaces and there being assumption, because she's a white woman, that she's happy that Trump is in office. I can't help ease safe there.
There were a lot of us. There were a lot of us. Yeah, I'm super curious, you know, now just, super curious now how white women who were Trump supporters are faring, you know.
I wonder.
Recognizing that their livelihood and personal power and autonomy too is on the chopping block.
Yeah, definitely. I do wonder that. I
know.
Yeah. Let's see. So oh, you already answered that one. Look at you.
Oh my gosh. I know it's coming.
I do believe that, actually. Just kind of stemming off of that, when I went to the pop-up, because I am somebody who identifies a lot with freeze, but I thought that I was well because I was still tending to the self-care and stuff.
Functional freeze.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so as I'm doing the movement, I finally got that tear. I finally was able to just cry, and it wasn't like an upheaval of a big emotion. I had known previous that something felt stuck because I could feel it in my jaw, and there's a lot of body awareness there that I've learned about myself. And I could feel the shallow breathing. And I had been going to yoga practices, but something about that specific one where I was able to set up my space, since it was virtual, felt safe in my home, where I was going under my rock and freezing into whatever safety I could cling on to. Candles and plants and different textures, aromas, plants different textures and aromas that make me feel good. And then you took us through the movement and through the breath work. You guided it, but then you let us do it on our own, building that skill of that agency, right? With that resilience piece.
Yeah, exactly.
And as I got that agency back to mobilize myself, once getting the teaching, the practice, and to do it right then and there, not later. Like, hey, take this tool, do it now. I was able to have that cry, and it cleared, and it was like, whoosh, I can breathe again.
Yeah. It takes a lot of metabolic energy. Anyone who lives with trauma will tell you this. It takes a lot of metabolic energy to hold things in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a huge amount of energy.
Yeah.
And, you know, we often hear this, you know, you got to feel it to heal it.
Oh, yeah.
We cannot feel it unless our nervous system feels safe enough to feel it.
It's a huge thing to bring up.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, we want to bring the nervous system's capacity, right, to know that we can feel it and come back, right?
Yeah,
we can feel it and regulate back to a state. And so, in Viasomatic, we really work on these foundations of like, first you have to learn to self-regulate. You have to learn to like, okay, if I'm having a stress response, still moving around, trying to function, but you'll notice that there's something off in that function, right? It's like, it's functional, I'm still going and doing all the things, but there's no joy in it. There's no life in it. There's no connection in it, right? There's just like, it just feels kind of numb, closed off, shut down. I'm just trying to get through. And it's a challenging way to be, because it feels like there's all this energy but no life, and there's nothing that can come in. Right? We can't be in this beautiful reciprocity of like, being with friends, being in community. When we're in that functional freeze.
Truly present rather than your body just being there.
And so, to have the nervous system's capacity to be able to regulate. So we started that practice with a little bit like, let's just regulate. And regulation creates safety. You realize like, okay, I can create, I have a little control. Use the word agency is my favorite word, right? And agency just means like, I get to choose what's going on in my nervous system. And like, your nervous system will react, but you can also guide it, right? And in that, we built that a little bit of that safety through regulation. And then we really full on moved into completing some stress responses. We completed a flight response. We completed a fight response. We went into these movements to stoke that active kinetic energy of the sympathetic nervous system. That's the thing that's moving us either toward the threat or away from the threat, right? And in that, underneath that, that's when we feel the thing. We feel the thing that we've been working with. For me, it was like sadness and rage. It was really clear. Yeah. And to be able to mobilize that. And I'm still continuing to do that. It's not like one and done, right? It's like, I sat with it. I sat with it last night again. It was like, oh, right. Anytime I, read a piece of news and there's some new thing and there's some new,
even talking about it right now, I can feel it.
Just there's some new, fuckery, right? That is happening.
For sure.
And it's like, okay, like, oh, I feel angry, I feel sad. You got to move the nervous system in order to feel that, express that, and have, again, the ability to then mobilize back into the world and not mobilize in survival mode. Right?
Yeah, because you learn to do that.
Yeah.
You can learn to do that, for sure.
To not mobilize in survival mode. And what we see is like, if we try and mobilize in survival mode, like we can do that, right? People with trauma are the most like gritty, resilient people you will ever meet. They know how to survive. Yeah. But it takes a toll on our health. We have really clear evidence that living in prolonged, consistent stress, right? So if we're looking at like, okay, this is what we're living with for the next 4 years, right? And if I stay in prolonged stress from what I'm digesting, from what I'm taking in, hopefully 4 years, right? From what I'm taking in, from what I'm digesting, if that stress response keeps getting triggered, and I'm not doing anything about it, right? Eventually, higher levels of cortisol, right? Lower immune function, lower executive function, right? Ability to, move around the world and have agency to create, make choices, right? That leads to adverse health outcomes, right? We cannot be living these next 4 years in prolonged, chronic, pervasive stress. We will not come out on the other end healthy.
You really just answered one of my next questions. What are the effects of the body if we're not taking care of our nervous system, if we don't learn these? And what we did wasn't this like huge recipe for take care of yourself. All simple, practical, basic things.
And you don't even have to know what yoga is, because it really isn't yoga.
Yes. And I think that's really the beautiful part, is that there are things to do outwardly, and there are also things to learn yourself, to embody, to bring that to the spaces that you walk in, where there are other people also who are feeling stuck right now. Yeah, for sure. I took some notes from, so we did an intro. You dropped us into the space, helped us to become aware of where we were and take that in. That just like melted my heart, especially for the person who's coming straight in from work maybe all day. You're like, oh shoot, like let me get on the virtual, la la la, like I'm a little bit late, and like you were able to calm that.
Yeah. And orienting, just really simply opening your eyes, like a little stretch. We've got these little round orbital muscles around our eyes, and just a little stretch of our eyes looking around above eye level will actually slow down ruminative thought. It'll actually take us out of this default mode network of our brain. That puts it, it's hard to talk right when I'm doing it, right? Like I can't keep a thought, I can't keep a narrative, because it's taking me out of the default mode network, which is that part of the brain that's like, I got to do this and then this next, right?
Hello, ruminators.
Fellow ruminators. So just literally like letting your eyes open and stretch will put a pause. It will put a space between the thoughts, space between the default mode network, which is just constantly playing the thing.
Right.
And so, it's a real simple practice.
And it's a huge practice. Yeah. And then we got to the breathing. Well, you really dropped us into the topic. We got into some breathing, got into some body movement, and then we transitioned to a presentation to like really get some context for what's happening, what you can do, how to take care of yourself. And that was like the cherry on top for me. I took a couple of notes, of course, but it said there was a part of the presentation, we'll say slideshow, because for some people presentation sounds a little intimidating.
This is a Canva slideshow. If anybody who knows me knows I'm a big fan of a slideshow. I might have hundreds of them inside of my computer.
Like a meme for everything. There's something that, whether it was a quote or it was like directly from you, it said, stress can lead us to direct action. Joy helps us sustain. Be intentional about the information that you consume. You had just said a little bit ago that we can be surviving, we can want action to take place, we can feel that resiliency, and then we can never get to the joy if we're not practicing it. And so the joy sustains that hard work.
I mean, joy connection is what sustains our ability to keep moving forward, to take direct action, to organize, right? To gather our people.
Rather than move from stressor to stressor.
I mean, and that, right, that, and when we're taking in information too, just a thing to know is like, you know, the question that comes for me is like, can I do anything with this? Right? Like, what can I do with this? What can I do with this? And it doesn't just mean like a direct action, what can I do with this? But like, is this a generative thing, right? And there are some bits of news that I take in and I'm just like, you know, that is generative. Like that has, you know, that sets me on fire in a way that like, I want to go, you know, shout this from the rooftops. And I'll speak, you know, I won't speak to what happened because it was a very, very intense case, but there was this incredible courageous woman in France with a really widely known case. Anybody can research it, Google it, but her name is Giselle Pellicot, and she in the middle of this really, really just horrific and painful court case said these words, and in French, I won't say them in French: shame must change sides. And she was referring to, right, an assault, right, like shame from women must change sides, right? We must change sides shame must change sides to the predator, to the attacker, to the assaulter. And I remember taking that in, like shame, those words, and that just like, I mean, it just like illuminated my whole being. And those are words now I bring in. Half of the cases that I work with in my yoga therapy practice are boundary consent violations. And right, that energy, those words. And so sometimes we can take things in that really, you know, change the way that we move in the world. And this is the beauty of having access to information.
Oh yeah.
And then, but we also have to see, like, how am I taking things in, right? That I can't digest, it's all too much. And B, that are triggering that just microdose of stress response over and over again of like, oh, look what happened again. Oh, look what happened again. Because we've been living for 300,000 years as Homo sapiens. We have had, you know, we've been just a little timeline of being a human. We've been agrarian for about 10,000 years. We've had writing for about 5,500 years. We have had the industrial age, machines, really, for about 200 years. We've had the digital age for about 50 to 75 years. We're taking in a blink. We're taking in information like no other generation before us. Right. And so the amount of cognitive load, not just cognitive load, but nervous system load from taking in that information, like we don't really understand what it does to the nervous system.
For sure.
And so the onus is on us to go, how is this affecting my nervous system? Right. And the suggestion is not to put one's head in the sand, right? But to go, okay, where are news sources that are actually reliable, that are non-biased, right? What can I take in that's not meant to, right? It's not clickbait. It's not meant to incite outrage.
Right.
And so how can I take in information that's useful to me?
For sure.
Right. And where are the spaces where I am just alone with that information and processing what I take in and processing my thoughts, right? That's something also we don't do, is we don't have time to just take in information, right? To just sit with our own thoughts, right? To just sit in these spaces. I mean, you know, whether it's in the car or wherever, where we're just like, I'm just sitting with my own thoughts, right? And we give, you know, in yoga spaces, we talk a lot about, you know, presence and, you know, being present and being here in the moment. And while it's useful to be able to go, oh, I'm here, you know, I can feel the wood under my feet. I can see your, you know, the glow on your face, your head nodding, right? I'm present for that.
Right.
I can see the way the light moves in the room. I also need space to just to be in my thoughts, wondering, moving, percolating, processing, digesting, right? It's like we're at an all-you-can-eat buffet, and most of it's toxic of information.
Hello.
Right? And when are we going to like stop going back to the table?
Yeah, piling on the food.
Right. And just be like, you know what? I'm good for a minute. I'm going to digest.
Yeah.
And
I believe that I've heard in your nervous system teachings that a full processed stressor is stressor, action, recover, and then rest.
Yeah. So there's the stressor. Right? It gets a little more complicated. We'll simplify.
Yeah.
There's the stressor. The stressor induces kinetic energy, right? This, you know, we've heard about in the stress response, people being able to do these Herculean things, right? Like lift cars off of children, right? We can have a macro dose of that, or we can have micro doses of that, right? And microdoses are generally, small microdoses are generally healthy because they can resolve themselves, right? But if we have chronic microdoses of stress, the body doesn't know how to return to homeostasis. It doesn't know how to return to balance on its own. And if we have a macro dose, right, and that kinetic energy isn't moved, then we have to take action. We have to move our bodies. And the reality is that we're you know, more sedentary than we've ever been at any time in our lives, in our history as Homo sapiens, while also taking in massive amounts of cognitive load and data, right? That triggers the nervous system. So we're in a little bit of a, you know, an interesting imbalance.
Really interesting.
Yeah, in that way. Yeah. So, and then, you know, when we move, we take action, and the movements are really simple. The movements we have in Viasomatic are really like, they're defensive orienting, which just means we're doing the things the body would do in that stress response.
Yeah.
And then in the recovery part, we need rest. We need downtime. I think I mentioned to you, really interested in anthropology, and there was an anthropologist in the 50s who went around to multiple continents studying indigenous tribes. And what he was measuring as an anthropologist was the work week. And their work week was how much time they spent on everything they needed to survive, including childcare.
Okay.
Right? So it was like shelter building, foraging, gathering food, all the things, right?
Yeah.
Including childcare. And he wrote a book about the Johansi people of the Western Sahara, which is ostensibly the hardest place in the whole world to survive.
Okay.
These guys had a 12 to 15 hour work week.
Y'all heard her.
12 to 15 hours.
12 to 15 hours.
So if you think about that, right, it's like 12 to 15 hours of like, I got to go do this. Okay, we got to go do this. Oh, we got to put the mud, we got to gather the dung and put the mud on the hut, right? I got to go do this. We've got to go forage. We've got to, right? 12 to 15 hours. And so the rest of their time, the rest of their week was spent
resting and
recovering, finding the shade under the tree, right? Yeah. Expending as few calories as possible because present. Food was scarce, and being with life, being with the cosmos, being with the microcosmos, cosm, being with life. And so we're not living in that way.
Yeah. That takes me to a note that I had wrote just with you, the last few sentences you just said. It said, lean into which is ungoverned. Love nurtures resilience. Yeah. And like, can you elaborate with us more what that looks like? We are present in Austin, Texas. Like if somebody wanted to get with the things that are present in life, the things that are happening in the now, not in the rumination of what happened earlier, regret, and taking action of undoing something that's already done or something that's in the future, and being so tunnel vision on that future thing to bring it in. What does practicing now look like for somebody?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things I can say that's just out there and it's free and available. My teacher says, if you want to know the mind of God, the mind of the universe, the mind of the divine, the mind of the mystery, that force, you go to places where it's uninterpreted by the mind of man, and that is nature. The natural world, right? And it's moving around us all the time. I stand out in my backyard and I watch the buds shooting out from the naked barren, and like, when does it happen? When is it going to happen? It almost happens overnight that all of a sudden the trees have leaves on them, right? And just like, whoa, what happened? And when I say lean into the ungovernable, when we talk about yoga, this was the essential purpose of yoga. The word itself, yoga means yoke, is to join ourselves, to unite ourselves with the force that causes the leaves to sprout from the trees, that causes the sun to rise and fall, that keeps the planets in orbit. And when we lean into that ungovernable force, that mystery, right? When we step out into it, we do feel that the world is bigger than us, right? Like the planet has watched civilizations rise and fall away, empires rise and fall, It's watched Nero fiddle, right, while Rome burned, It's watched all those things, it's seen all those things, and it's just kept going with its seasons, right, with its rhythms. And so, where we get lost as humans is in humanity, is in our own humanity, right? The mind of mankind, the mind of humankind, that's the place, it's where we can just get so lost and caught up and, and trying to find the answers, right? And, to take a note from the yogi's playbook, which is like, there is something else to lean into that is bigger than that.
Much bigger than
that we're all a part of, this beautiful force of creation.
And it's right there.
It's right there. And, whatever you call it God, you can call it the mystery, you can call it divine, you can call it nature. Right? The force of nature. And so just to lean into that, and to me, Love is an aspect of that, right? It is a thing that is invisible, unseen. We cannot touch it. We cannot measure it. We cannot see it. And yet we know it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have to see it. We don't have to, right? We don't have to see it to know that it exists.
Right.
And it is a sustaining force.
It is.
And in times that are meant to divide us, right? Leaning into that force of love and unity can remind us that even though we may have differing viewpoints, and it's really hard right now to be with other people who have different viewpoints and value systems, that there is a truth that we share in that love. Yeah. And so to me, love is really that, like, it is this higher order of the brain in a way, right? When our prefrontal cortex comes off, right? When we're in a stress response, we lose our ability to empathize, right?
Yes.
To take perspective, to like understand what's happening across from us, right? Yeah. When we're in that social engagement system, when we're in our prefrontal cortex, we have access to love. We have access to empathy, right? Yeah. We have access to communal care. And so it's a really potent and powerful force. To me, it's not cliche. It's biology and energy and spirituality all together.
Yeah. You're the one with kids that are like teens.
Babies.
What do they say? Put your feet in the, go get on some grass.
Oh no, the kids, the teens, I love it. The teenagers say, like, girl, you need to touch grass. Like if your friends are being too dramatic, they'll be like, girl, you need to touch grass. Now it's touch moss. Like when you're really like, girl, you need to go touch moss. I don't know where we're gonna find any in Texas, but if you have moss where you are, you just up leveled.
Yeah.
Like 100%.
I know some people who can touch the moss.
Yeah. So just go touch moss. Go look at the earth. Go, I have a friend, a colleague who does ecological mindfulness, and I mean his instruction is like, go find a circle of land anywhere and sit down and watch what is happening around you.
Yeah.
And be awed. Right?
Yes. Who cares who sees you in a circle looking at the ground?
No, you be odd, yes. ODD, yes, but also odd.
I see it.
Both of those things can be true at the same time. Yes. Yes. Be odd and be awed.
Be in awe and be awed.
Yes.
The last notes that I took. Let's see. Center the well-being of your nervous system. Nothing intentional can come from a dysregulated nervous system. We must learn to stretch our capacity to hold joy and stress in the same body, which you already touched point on that, but I just want to overemphasize that these skills that we want to bring in, even joy, even love, it comes with the practice. Yeah, and doing it with others can maybe even hold you accountable. Yeah. I mean, I even just really as simple as, this was a practice I led and I use it a lot in my work, is like, bring into your mind's eye something that brings you a sense of joy and wonder, awe, delight. Right? Yeah. So let's do that practice. Just bring into your mind's eye something that just creates that sense of awe, delight, love, joy, whatever it is that feels expansive. And feel that as a felt sense. It lives not just in the mind, but it also lives in the body. It's a felt sense. You might notice just space, a smile. And then imagine something that's a stressor, right? Something that feels like, it's contracted. This is hard, right? And that, you can feel that. It's a felt sense, right? Things get smaller, they contract, they shrink. But then come back to that sense of joy, delight, pleasure, spaciousness. And notice that it doesn't totally undo the stressor, but it just gives it a bigger space to exist in, right? Definitely.
Yeah. So we can hold those polarities, and we must, like, it's necessary, right? That we find, joy and pleasure. And in fact, when I work with trauma and nervous system dysregulation, I literally just shared this with one of my clients who's I'm 21, learning these things at 21.
Beautiful.
And like we don't lean into the parts that feel ruptured or broken. We lean into the wholeness. We lean into the sweetness. We lean into the joy. And that is what actually carries us to wholeness.
Definitely.
You know, that's what carries us to healing.
Yeah.
It's not going into the thing, right? It's like it's learning that we can hold polarity
For sure.
in these bodies. It's a really extraordinary thing.
It is. I mean, even just now taking that practice in with you, to go to joy and even feel fresh breath.
Yeah.
And then to think about the polarity, I even noticed I didn't breathe.
Yeah.
And my face got small.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then to go back to the joy and breathe again and be like, oh, I didn't even breathe.
Joy
in that
breathes.
moment. Yeah.
Stress contracts, right?
Sure.
Joy
For sure.
breathes. Delight breathes. Awe breathes. Wonder breathes. Yeah.
And we just did that in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Imagine 20 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day. Yeah. Just practicing that joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Jen. I wanted to ask you, you know, when we're not practicing these subtle things that take a moment's time in our nervous system, what can happen over time? And you already touched on that even. But I think that it's important to just emphasize that there's cause and effect with everything. And with just even taking 5 minutes to yourself every day, that over time, there's a benefit that comes to that. Yeah.
So I would like to brag here for a moment and say that
Please.
I meditate about 60 minutes a day.
Okay.
But I do it in 1 minute increments.
Yes, I like that. I like that.
And that what's like, you know, there's so much emphasis on like even 5 minutes, right? Like, you know, when I leave here, you know, I'm going to pause, I'm going to sit in my car, I'm going to take a beat, right? I'm going to take, you know, 60 seconds just to be like, okay, you know, how is that? How did that go? Breathe out, reconnect, transition. And then I'm going to go home and I'm going to be with my teenagers.
Yes.
Yeah, for this little, like sweet little moment in time before they fly the coop. And not carry the energy of what happened before, right?
For
so
sure.
So all that to say is that like we can in a moment drop into a state of expansive awareness. And I want to say that presence, we think of presence as calm. Presence, I have been present in the midst of rage.
Yeah.
I've been present in the midst of deepest grief, right? And, you know, and present even in fear, right? And presence is just this sort of, it's this expanded awareness. It's this awareness that doesn't have to be wholly contractive. Yeah. And so that in this cause and effect, that if we just take a moment to pause, a moment to pause and become curious about what's happening downstairs. Yeah. I mean, you know, I you know, this week noticed myself feeling just like a weird sort of anxiety and heaviness. And it's like, oh, right. And of course I want to get out of it. I don't want to be in it. And I want to distract or, you know, reach for the thing that tastes good or makes it feel better, or, right. Whether it's, you know, shopping or whatever, right. I'm not going to tell you all my vices, but I have them. And it just there was a momentary pause of like, what is this? I'm not going to solve it here. What is this, right? And I just sat for a moment. I was like, oh, okay. I feel just like heavy in my heart, and there's a longing, there's a missing. This is the time of year that I've experienced a loss.
Yeah. Okay,
right? It's an anniversary of a death, right? And like, oh, yeah, okay. I'm carrying that. And I could have just sort of kept kind of running around trying to
easily
eat through or shop through or whatever that feeling. But just that moment, that pause, literally, you know, 2 minutes of just being with that sensation and letting it, bringing my nervous system in, right? And letting it be as it is, was like, it was enough to just shift it.
Yeah.
Right? And my teacher says, whenever awareness touches an energy, the energy begins to transform. And so we're just bringing the awareness.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And taking that moment to pause rather than the reactive, the grabbing for something to fill that void. Mine is food. Hello.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's very hard.
Yeah. That is, I mean, that within itself is so huge. If you take nothing from this moment with us, take one thing, and I think it is that note of yourself, of when you are wanting, when you are striving for something, when you're reaching for everything and nothing feels like it's fulfilling that space, just closing your eyes down or looking up and around to drop into what is happening in the body in the present moment. Yeah.
And we don't always have to know, but we're just giving it room, right? We're just giving things room. You know, being human is infinitely complex and really hard. And even if we do all the practices and eat all the kale and biohack our nervous systems and, you know, whatever, say all the right mantras and prayers,
Yes.
you know, we still live with the reality of being human, which is, you know, suffering, right? There's and it's like, can we learn how to not create more?
There we go. Bingo. Hello.
If there's anything that this path has given me, it's like, being human is hard. Let's not create more suffering.
For sure. I want to find the balm.
I want to find the balm
to soothe that.
Yes, that is 100% it.
For sure. Rather than like put the thumb into the.
No,
I don't want that either. To wrap up our time together, for people who are going on Saturday, March the 15th, this coming up Saturday, to join you in person at 10 in the morning to 1:30. First off, I'm going to read what it says online on your website. It says, when the world feels too heavy and the constant noise of life starts crushing your hope, it's easy to hit overwhelm mentally, physically, and emotionally. That's the flop response, your body's way of saying, I'm done. I can't carry all of this. But you don't have to feel stuck. Join us to move your nervous system, where we'll help you reconnect with your body and find a sense of possibility again. Together, we'll shift from overwhelm to ease, giving you the space to let go, reset, and let your body exhale. I love that. That's wonderful. It's so welcoming to see online for sure. And like you said, I mean, like there's so many things to consume words that meet a lot of people right now where they're at, to be like, you know, they've been reaching for the things, shopping or going out and maybe having a drink or overeating with me, to be able to find something online that's like, hey, I see you.
And for us, you know, I'm doing this with Sam Pullen, who is my colleague.
We love Sam.
We love Sam. and we just want to create a space that is like, that we do deep work, but it's light. And it's playful, right? And there's this balance of, you know, levity and gravity. And I love Sam, just, you know, she brings that playful spirit. And so, a place that we can just really come, get a little bit information about our nervous system, just so we can begin to see, right, what's happening at the level of the nervous system, right? For sure. And then move through that. We're going to do a lot of really simple vagal toning, which turns on the parasympathetic nervous system and starts to just bring back a good feeling, bring back trust, bring back faith, bring back hope, bring back possibility, for sure, which we can lose when the nervous system is so overwhelmed that it goes offline.
So when my stomach is growling and I'm yawning, or maybe that little like tear comes down, I'm turning on the parasympathetic nervous system. Just to be clear.
That's what's going on.
I'm always yawning and my stomach is usually growling when we're together.
Yes, great. People yawn. It's so funny because I in my work I love it, and I love it because, you know, I had a yoga therapy client who wrote a testimonial, and she's like, it was really hard to describe this because it's like, it's a little bit mystical, it's a little bit science, and a little bit rock and roll. and I love, you know, there is a, you know, we think of this kind of embodied awareness as like a bit woo-woo, but it's like we have a body and it has sensations and it does things, right? It's like not everything is happening here.
Yes.
And so when I work with people, we're usually completing a stress response, turning on the parasympathetic system, and like 9 out of 10 times the belly will start to make crazy sounds. And it's really sweet because I can just be like,
there we go.
See, you are in your rest and digest.
For sure.
Right? And it's very, very clear. They get biofeedback that's happening. So like body's amazing.
Definitely. It is nice to have that feedback. When I've been in your class, I'm like, oh, I'm doing the work.
Yeah, you are doing the work.
Yes. And so, yes, we'll do that Saturday together.
So happy to have you there.
Yes, I'm so thankful to be there. And you should come. Everybody should come. And to the virtual pop-up, the next virtual pop-up, the one that I did in February is when we were talking about earlier. And they are doing that again. Viasomatic is doing that again in March, the end of March, the 25th. So you have time to sign yourself up, like Jen said earlier.
Yeah, and it is free, and it's free to bring your friends, and it is free to come, right? There's like anybody can come.
Yes.
If you have friends who are just stuck for whatever reason, bring your friends. And we encourage a suggested donation to every library, but that's totally optional. So it's like it's a community space that you get to come in and drop into, and we'll be doing this for the unforeseen future once a month, just to give people a space to like drop in and move their nervous system.
For sure. Yeah. And you know, the donation part, like $1, $5, $10, like something that you can feel energetically good about to give while receiving, and not any shame of like, if it's $1, next month it might be $5, next month it might be $25.
And it goes directly to the organization. It's directly to their donation link, not even to us. So, you know, it's straight to them.
Yeah. I love that. I love that there's an ability to drop in and take care, and also to feel like, okay, I'm also taking care of something else while I'm taking care of me.
Yeah, and to me too, what's been really cool about that donation part is just being like, wow, look at all these cool organizations, right? And people have been sending me links to like, I mean, I didn't know about every library 2 weeks ago, right? Yeah. It's like, look at these, like there are people out there who are doing direct action, who are gathering in their own space, in their own communities, and right, who are changing their world and changing our world. And so, you know, it doesn't take a boatload of money, and it doesn't take a boat, right? It's like, you know, we too can do these things.
Yeah. And it doesn't, you know, even with healing and doing this work, it doesn't take a buttload of time. Like, it's just a drop-in practice over time.
Yeah. It's just commitment to showing up.
For sure. Yeah. And even if you do not have an hour and a half in all of the month of March, you need to sit and reassess with yourself. Like, when I was first entering yoga and really chronically anxious and depressed, I had to take a deep look in the mirror, and I was like, what makes me think that I don't deserve 1 hour with myself in a whole month? That is crazy. I'm like, how do I keep forgetting to make it to that space? How do I keep forgetting to show up for myself? Yeah. So let this be the space that you show up for yourself. 1 hour and a half of taking care. I think that's everything. I wanted to close up with the way that you closed the February presentation slides, with the quote from Maya Angelou, "Still I rise, just like the moons, and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I rise."
Makes my bones rattle. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, glad to be here with you.
Appreciate you. Thanks for being here with us.
Yeah,
with me here in the church. Yes. Yes, love you.
Love you. Well done.